Welcome to our special video on restorative justice. How is it that we restore relationships where peace and reconciliation reign where there may have been conflict before? Tom Porter, former attorney, United Methodist elder, pastor, executive director of Just Peace, is going to talk with us today about restoring relationships and bringing hope and healing in the midst of relationships. When Tom worked within our nation's legal system, he learned a whole lot about what doesn't work in terms of reconciling relationships, how to bring people who are in conflict together to seek peace, justice, and harmony. And out of those learnings, he began to shape ways that could happen. And so we hope his words today, his insights, will help to answer some of your questions as a disciple about how you can help to bring peace and wholeness in a broken world. Thank you again for being a part of the discipleship adventure. Now here's Tom Porter.
One thing that I need your help on and that I've been thinking a lot about is in the beginning of the spiritual exercises of Ignatius, is this suggestion that the responsibility and the goal of a Christian is not to defeat another's proposition. That's not our goal. We're not out to win. We're not out to defeat the other. We're not out to destroy the other. He says we're out to help them save their proposition, whatever it is, and improve it. Now think about a general conference that is built around that proposition. Or think about a church that's built around that kind of, or a district. Are you in relationship to one of your pastors? Is that you're helping them gain clarity on why they feel the way they feel, getting deeper and deeper into their proposition until they come to a better place, until they improve it. Think about that. I need help on that. We live in a time in the church where there is a lot of conflict and a lot of anxiety, maybe more than I've seen in a long time. But it maybe is a sign of rebirth. Maybe it's a sign of something really happening, something breaking forth, and that's my dear hope. We are told by a new study by the Hartford Seminary that the greatest indicator of church decline is destructive conflict in the church. So it makes a difference. It makes a difference. It makes a difference for the future of these new church starts that we're trying to start up. It makes a difference in terms of the churches that exist. It makes a difference in terms of the future of our church. It also makes a difference in terms of our world. I started out in a world that was a world of adversarialness and retribution. The system of the trial practice, the system of the courts is, did you do it and how should you be punished? And that's the world that I lived in. And I came to believe that that world was not the way to resolve conflicts. It's a great backup system if we can't do it any other way. But it's not a place where you find healing. Now remember, our calling is to be ministers of reconciliation. That's what we are called to be. We are reconciled and we're therefore supposed to do likewise, right? That's our calling. That's our work. And I'll tell you, the courtroom is not the place to get it done. People, in my experience, didn't reconcile. I'd never experienced any sense of forgiveness in the courtroom. I didn't experience a lot of truth-telling. Believe it or not, it's not a place that's conducive to truth-telling. And ultimately, it didn't build community. And I went in a search of a better way. And the first thing that happened to me was I found that you could go from 2 tables to 1 table. That's a radical idea, isn't it? Let's get everybody together. Let's sit down and talk about this. And I discovered that people have the ability to solve their own problems. It was a miracle, in fact, that I would see daily as I worked with mediations. People coming together, empowered to tell their stories in a place that was relatively safe because I was there trying to create some sense of safety and facilitating a good conversation to get to a good place. In the church, our church trials, we've adopted the justice, these whole criminal justice system in terms of our church trials. And again, it's wonderful that we can have trials within the church as opposed to doing it in the other courts. That's important. And it's important that we have a way of resolving things that we can't resolve any other way. But that is not the best way to do it. So I found it there. I also found it in the way we deal with each other. It's very adversarial and it's very retributive around theological issues, difficult conversations. We don't want to improve the other person's proposition. We want to defeat them. We want to win, and there's always winners and losers. It's certainly not a situation where we grow together. So I found a response in both the church and the court, to the courtroom, the church, to my world, that I found was better being at one table. But then I needed to find out, what's the justice? What is the justice that's going to replace this retributive justice? And that took me to South Africa. What did I learn in South Africa? The first thing was I learned about the body of Christ. You know, they have this concept called Ubuntu, which means I am who I am because of my relationships. Descartes just got it wrong. It's not I think, therefore I am. It's I am who I am because of my relationships. Buber says in the beginning is the relation, in the beginning is God. God is the relational being. We live in God. We have our relationships because of God, and God is love. It's all about relationships, and we are who we are because of our relationships. This is why we so desperately need community, and we can't do it alone. You know, Longfellow said that if you knew the secret history of your enemies, you would see so much suffering that all hostility would cease. We need to know each other's stories. I love the 12-step program in our basements. Wish we could get it up in the sanctuary, where people were really authentic, where they were vulnerable, where they spoke their truth, where people listened to their truth, where people cared about them and walked the walk with them. We need to hear each other's stories. And what you are about is opening up those stories. They're real stories, not their abstractions, but they're real stories. And your job is to help them go deeper and deeper into their story until they find their song and their passion and their life and live it out. We've got to begin to understand the important role of forgiveness in this life. Bishop Tutu says there's no future without forgiveness. We have learned from the Amish and from others the power of forgiveness. I saw it in South Africa like I'd never seen it before. Forgiveness is something that we can't coerce. It's a gift. It's something that cannot be manipulated. It's something that has to happen in its own good time. But it is a gift we give ourselves primarily to free ourselves from the thrall of the offense. And it is powerful. You can't change people, I read in a book this weekend, but you can forgive them. And it's a very powerful, freeing act, and the power of forgiveness is the future. And that happens to be, according to Hannah Arendt, what Jesus taught us. A secular Jew says that Jesus brought us the word of forgiveness, the way out, the way forward, and that is the way of forgiveness. The table that I ended up at, the table that I truly believe is the place, the time, the ritual, and has the power to transform this world. And is the key and really needs to be the center of your ministry of peace building in the church, of just peace building in the church. And that's the table of Holy Communion. Now, it might be surprising that this lawyer arrived there and found that everything that I believe is summed up in that table. Now, and when I commend to you, in the midst of this anxious world, this general conference world, this world of violence, that we work from this table. You take it wherever you go. You work from it, you preach about it, you teach about it, you live out of it. I don't think in the short run we're going to find common ground on some issues in the church. You know what I mean? We just aren't going to do it. Now, we got to keep talking, we got to keep loving each other, we got to keep forgiving each other, but we're not going to find common ground. We find higher ground at this table. Now, it's interesting that everybody's at this table. You know, one of the things that mediators try to do is get people to the table. They're already at this table. So what I want to do is begin to celebrate that fact that we're all there together, talking about what's really important and doing what's really important. And it's going to infuse all of our conversations about difficult subjects. It's going to infuse our relational problems. It's going to inform everything we do. It's going to inform the kitchen table, the dining room table, the boardroom table, and every table in our lives. Conflict is not by itself a negative thing. In fact, nothing good ever happened without conflict. No change ever occurred. All the change you're talking about, it's not going to happen without conflict. And so conflict is good, can be good. The question is whether we're going to make it constructive or destructive. Where in this church have you really felt close to God and neighbor? Where have you felt really close to God and neighbor? I remember doing an intervention one time with a worship war. Has anybody experienced a worship war? You know what I'm talking about? You know, so we had the Bach cantata folks in the group. You know, the traditional worship service. We had the others that were accused of having 7-11 music. You know, 7 words sung 11 times. And so we had the contemporary crowd and the traditional crowd. And the interesting thing, what I asked them was the first thing I asked them was, and the only thing I really had to ask them was, where did you really, in terms of your own tradition, what you're coming out of and what really is important to you in your spiritual life, where have you felt close to God and neighbor? And half the people cried as they were telling their stories. And after it was over, everybody said, we want all of that. We want all of that.